The first game I ever completed was The Secret of Monkey Island on the Amiga 600. I was about 7 and it took me 3 months. 3 months! I could kickstart, develop and release my own adventure game in 3 months. In fact, I think I will.
The adventure genre has gone through its fair share of ups, downs and technical revolutions, but it's always been one of the most fondly remembered and respected genres in gaming. So this week on Escape from Mount Stupid, we're going to focus on some of the most iconic point-and-click games and ask if its recent resurgence is gaining any new followers or just cashing in on our nostalgia.
Right, I got it. My game is going to be about an ex-Russian president's meteoric rise from crippling alcoholism to become a professional wrestler. So if you want to contribute to this amazing and important video game, please visit my Kickstarter. It's at kickstarter.com/Full Nelson with Boris Yeltsin.
Early adventure games are a product of hardware limitations, a way of creating vast immersive worlds without the complications of actually having to create vast immersive worlds. Developers like Infocom released text-only adventures such as Zork and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. They worked like single-player D&D games. You choose what direction to explore in and interact with people and objects as they came into view. The game used a text parser which would process commands like walk north, enter house and kill troll. Then in 1980, Sierra released Mystery House and with it invented the graphic adventure. Initially at least, these games would still use the text parser but accompanied it with a basic graphical interface. With imagery, the text parser became surplus to requirements, and during the mid-80s, mouse-controlled graphic adventure games started to become more common. Now all you had to do was point and click. This period would prove to be the golden age for point-and-click games. The new interface allowed for more creativity in puzzles, and with limited, mostly static environments that you spend a lot of time in, the teams behind these games could create gorgeous worlds relatively fast, worlds that were far more detailed and believable than other games at the time.
Many of these are legends of video games lore and have characters and stories that we all still remember today, but the story of point-and-click games has some interesting characters of its own.
Like so much of humanity's history, the story of Lucasfilm Games started with David Bowie.
In 9 hours and 23 minutes, you'll be mine.
Their first adventure game, Labyrinth, was based on the 1986 Lucasfilm movie of the same name and published by Activision. A year later, they decided to self-publish for the first time, a release that would prove to be quite the game changer. Developed by Ron Gilbert and Gary Winnick, Maniac Mansion had you play as Dave Miller as he enters the aforementioned mansion to save his girlfriend from the mad scientists therein.
It had these creepy phallic tentacles in it too. Ugh. Japanese perverts must have loved it.
The story was heavily influenced by B-movie cliches, while the mansion itself was said to be based on the main house at Skywalker Ranch. I used my super journalist skills to ask Mr. Gilbert to summarise the genre in one word, and his answer summed up his involvement pretty well. The game introduced the script creation utility for Maniac Mansion, otherwise known as Scum. As the player, you'd collect objects hidden around the game world, and then use the 15 or so commands on offer to push, pull, give, look, and open your way through the game. This interface would become the backbone for Lucas adventure games for years to come. 1988's Zack McCracken and the Alien Mindbenders, 1990's Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and of course Loom.
Loom? Yeah, where do I know Loom from? Oh yeah, that guy in that bar told me about it. Where was that again?
The Secret of Monkey Island, released in October 1990, saw Ron Gilbert team up with industry newbies Dave Grossman and Tim Schafer to create a hilarious pirate adventure starring an incredibly unlikely hero. As Guybrush Threepwood, you take part in circus tricks, do plenty of insult sword fighting, fall in love with a sharp-tongued governor, and sail to the mysterious Monkey Island where you meet a tribe of vegetarian cannibals. Secret is considered by many as the funniest game ever made, with dry wit and cutting sarcasm in each of the hilarious dialogue options. The puzzles were clever as hell, and it's also incredibly self-aware with fake game over screens, a pirate peddling other Lucas games, and arguably the best punchline in video game history. A sequel, Monkey Island 2 LeChuck's Revenge, was released a year later, continuing the story of Guybrush as he tried to win back Elaine and find a mysterious treasure Big Whoop.
At the risk of spoilers, I'm keeping these descriptions relatively brief, but it should be mentioned that most of these games are still available to play in some form or another today, Monkey included.
Both games have been given a special edition re-release on consoles, PC and mobile devices with the option to switch on HD graphics, a hint system, new voice work and developer commentary. Go get them now! In fact, it's hard not to suggest going back to play anything Lucas made during this period. Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis, which came out in '92, was another wonderful game I adored playing on my Amiga 600. Then Sam & Max hit the road in 1993. The game used SCUM but dropped the on-screen inventory and the verb-object selection in favour of a dynamic cursor system. The following year, a sequel to Maniac Mansion saw Grossman and Schaefer lead their first project and create another instant classic for Lucas. Dave the Tentacle has you take control of Bernard and two of his friends in a time-travelling romp as they attempt to stop an evil purple tentacle. Another incredibly funny and clever game, and the first LucasArts adventure game to include voice work.
You must have me confused with some other Bernard Bernoulli.
No, you're the one. You broke into our mansion a few years ago to save your little friend. What did you come for this time?
As 3D graphics became commonplace, the popularity of the point-and-click graphic adventure game began to decline. 3D adventures like Myst became bizarrely popular, but Lucas continued crafting in 2 dimensions. 1995's incredible Full Throttle, designed by Tim Schafer, had you take control of a biker called Ben in a dystopian future full of hovercrafts. Though shorter than its peers, its style, atmosphere and killer soundtrack helped it stand out from the crowd. In 1997, a third Monkey Island, The Curse of Monkey Island, was the final to be released on SCUM, and though it reviewed well and had a wonderfully hand-drawn art style, it's never reached the level of cult status its siblings have.
Eventually, Lucas decided to try out this whole 3D thing, and SCUM was put to rest. But what they created next would prove to be one of the best adventure games ever made.
Some festival, huh?
Yeah, pretty busy. My carpal tunnel syndrome's really acting up.
But you don't have any tendons.
Yeah, well, you don't have a tongue, but that doesn't seem to shut you up now, does it?
Heavily influenced by Latin American tradition, Grim Fandango takes place in the land of the dead, where the righteous pass through on their way to the afterlife, while sinners are forced to take a 4-year pilgrimage on foot. The game takes place on November 2nd, the Day of the Dead, over 4 consecutive years. You play as Manny Calavera, a travel agent at the Department of Death, on a quest to find the lovely Meche, who's been wrongly sent on the pilgrimage. Though Grimm retained the humour we'd come to expect from Lucas games, it was also morose and sentimental. It was permeated by themes of death, lost dreams and sad farewells. The ending of the game is a deeply sad moment that brought many to tears, sadly poetic in a way, as Grimm was a commercial failure and signalled the death knell of LucasArts adventure games and the genre as a whole. 2000's Escape from Monkey Island was another wonderful game, but once again underperformed at retail. And when the 3D Sam & Max sequel, Freelance Police, was canned, the game was up. Lucas admitted gamers' needs had moved on and closed development on adventure games.
Lucas are often considered to be the most influential studio in adventure game development, but this story has more than one character.
While Lucas were making waves in America, across the pond there was a similar revolution going on. Directed by Charles Cecil, 1992's Lure of the Temptress was released on the Amiga, Atari ST and PC to commercial and critical success, using the virtual theatre engine that would be used on several successful games afterwards. 2 years later, the dystopian classic Beneath the Steel Sky came out on the Amiga and PC. It takes place in a future Australia and focuses on a character who's been named after a can of beer. This highly recommended classic is now available on iOS. While Temptress and Steel were instant classics in their own right, it was Revolution's next game that cemented their legendary status. Broken Sword, The Shadow of the Templars came out on the PlayStation and PC in 1996. You play as George Stobart, an American tourist minding his own business in Fair Paris, who gets caught up in a Knights Templar mystery that sends him on an adventure around the world, from Syria to Scotland. Only a year later, a sequel was released, Broken Sword 2, The Smoking Mirror, and though its darker tone didn't win over critics, it sold very well. After a couple of years of unsuccessful experimentation, Revolution returned to the Broken Sword universe. Using the Renderware engine, the Sleeping Dragon featured lifelike 3D graphics, and to ensure compatibility across platforms, the character was directly controllable. This makes it the only Broken Sword game not to use a point-and-click interface. The most recent game in the series, Angel of Death, returned to the point-and-click interface, but also allowed George to be moved around the environment using a keyboard. The first 3 games in the series are now available on Steam, but if you'd rather play something a bit fresher, you'll be happy to know the series is set to return. After a successful Kickstarter campaign, Revolution planned to release Broken Sword: The Serpent's Curse on home computers and portable thingamajigs early next year.
Sierra had basically invented graphic adventure with Mystery House and continued to release titles into the 90s.
These included Space Quest, King's Quest, Quest for Glory, Quest, and everybody's favourite middle-aged sex offender sim, Leisure Suit Larry, Quest. Their most memorable point-and-click game came later, in 1993. Gabriel Knight's Sins of the Fathers is the first of 3 games that focused on protagonist Gabriel Knight. In 1995, they released the frankly rubbish Phantasmagoria.
This bizarre FMV point-and-click thing was actually the first game to ever have a rape scene in it. Ugh. Oh wow, is that it? Oh, come on man, that's not cool. I don't think we're allowed to show rape. Is it rape? Hey, are either of you being raped? No, it's cool, that's not rape, they're just having sex.
The second Gabriel Knight game, The Beast Within, a Gabriel Knight mystery, used this technology, though to much better effect. And the third game, Blood of the Sacred Blood of the Damned, experimented with the core mechanics, but was sadly the weakest of the three.
If that's what I think it is, I can die a happy man.
It seems we've spent over a decade pointing and clicking on things.
I asked for some of people's favourites and the responses were as varied as the games themselves. AdventureSoft's Simon the Sorcerer series, Flight of the Amazon Queen, I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, Clock Tower, the X-Files game, Discworld, and the Neverhood. As the genre went into decline, we've seen the lines between adventure and more traditional games begin to blur. Quantic Dream merged action and adventure in Omicron the Nomad Soul, which then led to Indigo Prophecy and eventually Heavy Rain. Jason! Funcom's incredible The Longest Journey used point and click, but by the time its sequel Dreamfall was released in 2006, it resembled an action-adventure game.
After a quiet decade, it seems there's been a resurgence in adventure games' popularity.
Telltale Games resurrected both Sam & Max and Monkey Island in 3D episodic form, as well as the wonderful Strong Bad's cool game for attractive people. Their latest adventure, the critical and commercial success that is The Walking Dead, may be a glimpse at the future of point and click. But we've seen movement on the 2D front too, in Europe with Daedalus The Whispered World and Deponia, and in the UK with Size 5 games Been There Dan Dat and Time Gentlemen Please. Then earlier this year, we saw Gilbert and Schaefer's Double Fine Adventure pitch become the most successful Kickstarter campaign of all time. We should be playing that and Gemini Rue at some stage in 2013.
There's no doubt that many of us would love to see a return to the good old days of point and click, but aren't we just flirting with nostalgia? Should modern gamers care about adventure games?
Do gamers want to spend most of their time playing photo hunt games? In the age of the internet, where solutions are readily available, do people really want to spend hours solving simple objectives by convoluted means? In our achievement hunting, unlockable, persistent leveling modern world of player reward, is a good story enough? Modern point and click games have done a lot to solve some of these issues, but whether or not they can grab the attention of new gamers is unknown. But then with Double Fine Adventure's successful crowdfunding, does the genre need new fans?
Let me know what you think in the comment box below, and also please tell us your favourite point and click games, because I've probably left them out. Next week I'm stepping away from fan favourites to concentrate on the incredible death and rebirth of one of the most niche genres in gaming. Trust me, you're going to want to stick a seatbelt on for this one.